Time. Let's talk to a representative of the Conservatives today. Later we'll talk to a Labour representative, Miriam Cates, co-chair of the new Conservatives group of, well, until very recently, MPs. Good morning to you, Miriam.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. I just want to ask you first of all about what Rishi Sunak had to say last night about Channel Migrants. This was on the Sun's Never Mind the Ballots debate last night. And he basically said that migrants in France are queuing up in Calais, waiting for a Labour government. He'll let them on the streets. Is that your concern as well?
Yes, and there certainly seems to be some reporting this morning in the papers of reporters who've gone across to Calais and spoken to some of these migrants who are saying that the gangs that are trafficking them are waiting until July the 4th, when they know for sure who's going to be the next government. And of course, if it is Keir Starmer's Labour Party, they have already said that even if the Rwanda plan was working, they would scrap it. So I think that's a pretty safe bet for the people smugglers if indeed Labour are in power after July the 4th. And of course, this is where the left just don't understand the purpose of the Rwanda plan. And of course, it hasn't worked yet. It certainly hasn't worked perfectly, and it's cost a lot of money. I absolutely concede that. But the idea behind it is that we need a deterrent. We are not responsible for all the migration in Europe. We can't stop every single boat from leaving France. We can't stop boats from landing here. We must, it's absolutely morally imperative that we treat people humanely if and when they do arrive. So the most important thing we can do is deter people from making that crossing by making it clear that there's a very high chance if you do land here illegally, you will be detained and deported to Rwanda.
But the thing is, there isn't a very large chance, because we know perfectly well, even if the Rwanda policy gets off the ground, the first plane goes, we are talking about a small fraction of those who've ever arrived in this country.
Well, yes, but the idea of a deterrent effect is that even if it is a small fraction, at least to start with, there is still a risk if you choose to come across from France that you will not be.
There's a bigger risk that you'll drown in the Channel than there is that you'll get sent to Rwanda. They're willing to take that stupid risk, leaving a perfectly safe country.
At the moment, that is true, as I have conceded. But as you have said, and as these reporters have found, it's enough of a risk that people are delaying their crossing until they know for sure whether or not the plan is cancelled. Now, clearly that level of risk hasn't shown up in the numbers yet, and I fully concede that. I'm not arguing with you that the plan has worked.
Record number of people have crossed the Channel.
But the idea behind a deterrent scheme is that it deters people. But the problem that we have found, and that I and other members of the New Conservatives pointed out back in January when the latest legislation was going through, that really, unless we leave the ECHR, it's going to be very difficult to enforce this scheme, whether or not it is successful, because it will always be possible for individuals to make claims through the courts on the basis of their ECHR rights that they shouldn't be flown to Rwanda. And unfortunately, it only takes one or two cases like that to scupper a flight. So I think that's why the Prime Minister has said that he would consider that if there were no other option. And I think there is no other option.
Can I ask you about something which, again, not something the Conservatives want to be talking about in this election, but it has dominated for about a week now. And this is this betting scandal over the date of the election being called. New information today. Well, we had new information already in terms of apparently 5 extra Metropolitan Police officers on top of the one close protection officer to the Prime Minister are now being implicated and investigated by the Gambling Commission, no doubt by other police officers as well, over placing bets. But also, of course, we've got 2 aides in number 10 to the Prime Minister and 2 candidates. Now, there have been a lot of pressure on the Prime Minister to withdraw support from the 2 Tory candidates on the basis that one of them, Craig Williams, had actually admitted placing those bets on the date of the election. Laura Saunders has not. However, the Prime Minister, a party spokesman has announced in the last couple of moments that the Tories can no longer support either Craig Williams or Laura Saunders as candidates in the constituents they're standing in after they've been accused of betting on the timing of the general election. Your reaction to that?
I think that sounds like a sensible decision. And look, as a candidate, and I know I've spoken to other candidates, former MPs, it's just hugely, hugely disappointing to see people who have been at the top of the party from behaving like this. And it shows a lack of seriousness, I think, about the importance of the election, what it means, not just for the country, but for Parliament. And, you know, all I can say is it's hugely disappointing. And clearly, if your first reaction to hearing private information about the date of the election is to go down to the bookies, then you're not suitable to be working where you're working.
I mean, we don't know. It certainly would be illegal, any of the police police officers involved because of the information they get, the job that they have. However, and again, no one has been charged with anything, so we need to maintain innocent or proven guilty. But it's an ethics issue, isn't it, more for these aides and MPs? But here's the thing. The spokesman said, as a result of ongoing internal inquiries, we have concluded we will no longer support these two as parliamentary candidates in the election. And they've checked with the Gambling Commission that this decision does not compromise the investigation that they are conducting, which is rightly independent and ongoing. Now, there's been a lot of pressure, even from Tory ministers, like Steve Baker and others, from his own side to say, why have you not suspended these candidates? Why have you not thrown them out of the party? And a lot of these things, we can't interfere with the Gambling Commission. But a lot of people say, all you need to do is say to them, were you in the meeting when it was decided? And you'd have a minute, you'd know who was in that meeting, for goodness sake. When did you place this bet? Was it after that meeting? Right, you're gone, done. That could have been done a week ago, but it wasn't. Is this yet another example of, Rishi Sunak making the announcement outside in the pouring rain, not staying till the end of D-Day long enough, not handling this quick enough? This is just a litany of errors.
Those things may well be political errors, but I think this is a case of respecting due process. And I think it's very, very important to do that.
No, nothing's changed.
Let me finish, Julia. I think it's very important not to react, but to respond. Now, that doesn't change whether or not these people are guilty and whether or not they should be eventually thrown out of the party, suspended and lose support. But, I myself was subject to an baseless investigation that has been completely cleared, completely thrown out. And I realised during that process how important it is to respect the process and not to come to conclusions immediately, because there's always misinformation flying around in the news. There's always
I'm not saying the Prime Minister on the basis of allegations, but he's able to make his own inquiries. Were they in the meeting when that decision was made? Was it a guess, or was it insider privy information they had on a personal, secret, confidential basis?
Absolutely.
That information is information he could have ascertained a week ago.
I don't know any more about the information than is in the press.
Okay.
And we've also got to remember that the Prime Minister is running a general election campaign. And I know, just as a candidate, how all-consuming the campaign is. So goodness knows what it is like for the Prime Minister.
Miriam, he looks like he's already accepted defeat. He's energy levels, the trotting out the same. He looks like he's already just gone, I'm out of here.
He's clearly outperforming Keir Starmer in the debates, but he is a human being, and he is subject to all the same emotional time pressures that everybody else is. Yep. And I personally can forgive him for feeling a little bit downhearted at the moment, but I still think he's performing brilliantly in the debates. But look, this is a general election. This is our once in a 5-year opportunity for the country to decide who's going to form the next government. Of course, it's going to place huge pressure on leaders, on political parties. It's going to bring out both the best and the worst in people, as we're seeing. But this is democracy. This is the opportunity to choose who you want to represent you, to make those decisions based on the facts, based on your expectations of those leaders. They're good things and there are bad things, but this is democracy, and this is what does happen in general election campaigns.
Can I ask you just very briefly one final story? Labour have confirmed they are going to ban conversion therapy. It's, again, not that I'm aware that gay conversion therapy is remotely an issue in this country. It is in America, it isn't here, but that would include, we understand, trans conversion. So that there are risks that therapists, parents who say, we don't believe you're born in the wrong body because that's not a thing, we think possibly you're gay or possibly something else, that could be criminalised. You've been a big campaigner against sort of woke stuff and stuff that puts our youngsters at risk in this sort of area. What are your concerns about this?
I think this is hugely concerning because although on the face of it, this seems a noble aim, but as you say, there's no evidence that those kind of abusive practices are occurring in the UK. And in fact, the Government Equalities Office spent a couple of years trying to find evidence of it and couldn't.
But they're going to ban it anyway.
Well,
as if we haven't got any real problems.
Well, indeed. And we do have laws that prevent coercion and violent practice. Of course we do. They are already criminal. But the problem with this proposal is that essentially they're seeking to criminalise, or at least have a chilling effect on parents, teachers and counsellors who want to protect children from gender ideology, who want to say to a child, no, you can't change sex. No, you mustn't take these hormones. No, get off social media. No, don't think that you that you can change sex, because you can't.
Yep.
And twice this year, private members' bills have been brought through Parliament, one in the House of Lords, one in the House of Commons. They've been completely thrown out by parliamentarians because of the failure to be able to properly define terms such as gender identity and the failure to protect parents, responsible parents, who want to protect their children. So I don't know why Keir Starmer thinks he can succeed where the government and Parliament have failed. Okay. And I think it just exemplifies how Labour have completely tied themselves in knots over this issue. They're trying to get the law to fit their ideology rather than reflecting reality in the law, which is why, of course, we threw these bills out.
Okay.
But although
depending on the majority, they may well get those through. We'll have to leave it there. Really appreciate you joining us. Get back to the campaign trails all our candidates do. Miriam Cates, co-chair of the New Conservatives. Thank you very much indeed for that.